Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you know exactly how powerful a podcast can be. Whether it's for entertainment, personal growth, commute time, or your daily, maybe weekly workout in the gym, podcasts are the medium that millions of people use to get the content that they're looking for. And the question I get most often is, how do you create your podcast? If you haven't heard about Anchor, I'll tell you because a good friend told me. First of all, it's free. We always like to lead with the good stuff. The platform has all the tools you need to record and edit your podcast, all from your phone, tablet, or laptop. Anchor then goes to work for you by distributing your podcast episodes for you so it's able to be heard on all the top platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. Best of all, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's a one-stop shop to create your podcast and get your voice heard and your story told. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Representing East Oakland, man.
Welcome back. Another episode of the Hawk Vision podcast. Guys, you know what it is. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, I know you could be anywhere in the world, as the saying goes, but you're here to rock with us, and I could not be more appreciative. Make sure you share this across your social media platforms, the Hawk Vision podcast. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff with other visionaries just like yourself. Now that that's out the way, the guest that I have today, I'm super excited about. She's a friend of the show. We go way back in terms of connecting on social media and exchanging thought processes. She's an executive coach. She's a founder and owner of the Core Impact Coaching, specializes in accountability, leadership. She's worked with companies like Eli Lilly, National Association of Women of Business Owners. I mean, company after company, Fortune 50. And most importantly, she's here today to share some of those success tips and the principles that has helped her reach the pinnacle of success. The world famous Miss Lynn Zettler. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much. You're so kind. You always are so generous.
You have earned every one of them. Everyone. No worries.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Let's go ahead and jump right in. For those that don't know, maybe they've been under a rock in the professional growth space. Let's talk about your background and what led you to start your own business in this industry.
Oh, sure. So I have a really kind of a strange path that led me to where I am today. I actually went to college and studied chemistry, believe it or not. So I have a little bit of a science brain.
Okay.
And I worked for Dow Chemical for 20 years, and I worked in their patent law department. So I'm a patent law specialist as well. So that, for 20 years, I was good at it. I liked to write. Writing was a big part of that. And I had several leadership positions there. I always really loved the people development that they provided in a large company like that. It was, in my opinion, just like the gold standard.
Yes.
And but I knew there was always something missing. I never felt like I was really contributing the way that I wanted to contribute to the world. So I read this article one day in the newspaper about coaching. And it was like a full page. And I read it and I went, oh my God, this is what I do. I talk to people this way.
Yes.
People come to me. People seek me out for this. I didn't know you could get paid for this. So I very quickly said, I have now found out what I want to do with my second career. And I figured out how you get certified, how do you get educated on this, because credentialing and, integrity and all of that is very important to me. So yes. I wanted to make sure I did it right. And I just thought, well, I don't have to quit my job yet. I'll just get my certification while I'm working, right, and I'll apply it to my leadership at that time. And so that's what I did.
Awesome. And looking back at it, do you think that it was important to keep the 9-to-5 going while you grew yourself in the business in terms of the two different dynamics that it takes to be a great employee or contributor and then to run a business on your own?
Absolutely, because it is a transition. It's a transition and it's an evolution. And I, obviously, since I was in that job for 20 years, I had this bubble, right? This corporate bubble of thinking
Right.
of the way that the world worked. And then when I started kind of venturing out, all of a sudden I realized how much small business runs our country. I mean,
Yes.
is just the backbone of our country. It was so eye-opening to me. And I had to really shift my thinking away from that corporate mentality into a smaller version, right? Of what do these people need?
Right.
Versus, the big, just the big processes and gears of a corporation that's been around for 100 years.
Right.
Yeah, but I definitely needed that time, number one, to get confidence in myself, in understanding what it was going to take to replace my salary even, and also to plan, and also a little bit of convincing my husband, to be totally honest.
that little small part, right?
Yeah, you got to get the family on board, right? Our son was in college. My youngest was in college at the time. He's like, can you hold on just 2 more years?
Right.
And I was like, nah, I really can't. So we figured it
love
out. We put our plan together, made the leap. But yeah, it was, I needed that time. I kind of call it your engine that's going to fuel you when you're ready to jump. You need
Nice.
that engine to run for a little while so
Yeah.
that you have some momentum built up.
Totally agree. I think it's important to have the family on board, but then 2, to understand that there's a natural transition, because I tell people all the time not to quit the day job, even though you feel as an entrepreneur, you feel like you're, mentally unemployable, right? Because you've now started to dream and think and kind of dive into just all the things that you want to do and be with your new business. But just because you're mentally unemployable doesn't mean that you can't put the 9 to 5 on a version of autopilot, right? So that you can focus
Right.
on building the business. What did it look like to launch in terms of structure? Was it having enough money to launch? Did you have a large investment, or how did that look for you?
Yeah, no, it was not. It was not a large investment at first. So I started my training in 2005, and then launched my business in 2006, almost immediately.
Nice.
Now, they teach you to do that when you're in coaches training, because they're like, you know what? You need to start as soon
Right.
as you can. Now, I kept my job until 2009.
Okay.
So it was for that period of time that I started putting the business. So first, there's so many things about building a business, right?
Yes.
It's the easy part is just the name and the URL and, getting a registration.
Right.
That part you can do. But then you have to figure out, okay, how am I doing invoices? How am I taking credit cards? How am I doing my marketing? Those things take time. And so by having that amount of time, it really gave me the space to let those things evolve and come up with a more robust plan, rather than taking that leap immediately and jumping in the deep end, so
Yeah.
to speak.
I love it. I am a complete advocate for starting ASAP, but it's so hard to build when your back is against the wall, right? And so
Yeah.
that's why
Oh,
I tell
yeah.
people, do not, leave that day job. Let's talk about the core values index. What is that exactly, and why is that important for your clients?
Oh, yeah. So this is my favorite tool of all time, actually. So as you can imagine, working for a big corporation, they take you through all kinds of assessments.
Yes.
It's the assessment of the flavor of the year kind of thing. So I would always take the DISC, the Myers-Briggs, there's just this numerous, but we never really did anything with those. It was like, yeah, you took it and then you just kind of put your results on the shelf and said, well, wasn't that interesting? I learned something about myself.
Right.
So a friend of mine introduced me to the core values index, and she said, I use this for all my clients. And I said, I'm not really a fan of assessments. I feel like they're just money makers that, sits on your shelf.
Right.
And she said, no, this one's different. You really need to try it. Well, first of all, it's different because it's not expensive. It's only $50. And some of these assessments are, running the thousands these days.
Very much.
So yeah, this is very, very affordable. And what I love about it, number two, is it's simple. It's easy to understand and apply immediately. It is not something where you have to, remember, to be honest with you, I can't even tell you what my Myers-Briggs is because I can't remember what all the different options were.
Right. There's tons of different combinations in those results. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those assessments. I'm just saying in my experience, it just didn't give me what I needed.
Sure.
This assessment measures the 4 core values that everyone shares. There are 4 of them. Was developed by a guy who did a lot of research of all the other assessments. It's highly repeatable. It's been proven down to a 5th grade level. And it really measures the energy that you bring to work with you. What kind of energy do you bring? Are you, in other words, it's your innate, unchanging nature. So, for example, are you someone who is completely gut driven, right? And so you just go by your gut, you make all your decisions that way. Right. You move quickly, you don't analyze things. That's called a builder, right? Okay. And that, there are lots of people, I'm sure in your life you can think of who are like that. Yes. They want to move fast, and they get a little irritated if people slow them down, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with a builder, right? We need people who can move fast and make quick decisions. Everyone needs one of those.
Yes.
But then there are also people, innovators like me. I'm an innovator. So what I do is I like to sit back. I like to assess the whole situation first. I like to observe, and then I figure out what the next thing to do is. What makes the most sense? So I'm going to slow a builder down. And a builder's going to frustrate me a little bit because they want to move too fast and they're going to make too many mistakes. Right. So understanding that about yourself and your team, as you can imagine, just opens up the door of communications. Right. Because if I know that you really want to move fast, I know that I can have a conversation with you and assure you that we're going to move quickly, but I just need to get these last 2 pieces of information. Then I promise we're off to the races, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why I love this so much, because there's only 4. You can understand yourself. You can almost picture other people as we talk about those 4 of where other people fit. Right. And it's so helpful in communications and also in understanding why people do what they do. Yeah. Because what's important to them is different than what's important to you. So I have every client of mine take it. It gives me a lot of information about them so that I can coach them better. I understand what makes them tick. I know what motivates them. And so it's just been this great tool that I just love. And again, like I said, it's so inexpensive. It seems like, why wouldn't you want to use it?
Right. No, what I like about that is, one, like you said, the cost is paramount, because we've both had corporate experiences, and it never ceased to amaze me why they would spend so much money on these various different assessments and tools, and you get your results, talk about them in the breakout session, and then you never hear from them or about them again. Like, there's no follow-up. In a lot of corporate, it blows my mind. They would spend $10,000-$20,000 on budget and not even use the tool after the 3-day workshop. Like, it was ridiculous.
Right. So what I've done with the companies that I've worked with and the core values index is we've made it part of their culture. Nice. So we talk about every training that they have, or any conversation, or even the people that I'm coaching in the organization. I'll say, okay, which CVI energy are you using right now? And they'll go, oh, yeah, I'm using Builder right now, but I probably need to be a merchant. They know the language. Yes. And they can also talk to each other that way to say, hey, I understand that you really need a lot of information, but we got to make a decision in an hour.
Right.
You know, so they can say, I need you to stop being an innovator right now, and I need you to switch. They can use that language, and they understand each other, and it's so much better than, oh my God, what's wrong with you?
Right.
Right.
Right. And that's something that you can use, you know, if you understand it, that's something you can use at home too, right? So like I understand my wife's personality, and she's somebody that wants all the details so that she can put all the pieces together and make sure the puzzles fit. And I'm a visionary, right? So I am like yourself, an innovator. All I want is big picture. You know what I mean? Like, this is the goal. We're getting on the boat. We're going that way. And she's like, wait a minute. Do we have water? Do we have steering? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I love it.
And you're like, I'm not worried about it. We'll figure it out.
I love it. The bottom of the boat could be made with screen doors, and I am still like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, we'll get there. I know it. Just imagine.
I love it. Yes, that is so hilarious. When we set up this interview, and again, thank you so much for your time. We started talking about how important accountability was, and having a partner or a system of accountability. Can you talk to me a little bit about why that's remains so prevalent and why people fail so much at accountability?
Yeah, it is one of my favorite topics because it is so prevalent. I just got off a coaching call today. As a matter of fact, that was the same. My client was just complaining about this outside vendor that they've been using and how they're not meeting expectations and we need to fire them, etc. And I said, well, what do you need to do for you to change your opinion?
Right.
And all of a sudden it was, well, they need to do this, 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 and this. And then I said, well, what did the contract say? Oh, I have no idea.
Wow.
Well, how do we know that they're not meeting your expectations if we don't know what the original expectations were?
Right.
So we skip steps. We assume, we just make a lot of assumptions about, hey, this is an important project. We're all moving fast. So I'm assuming that you're going to get that back to me, right? Very quickly.
Right.
But very quickly to you is the end of the day. And very quickly to me is tomorrow at noon. And now you're mad because it's now 5:00 and you haven't received it yet.
Right.
But nobody specified. We are not disciplined enough to hold people accountable and to manage expectations. So that is the problem. When people haven't met your expectation, I guarantee 95% of the time it's because your expectations weren't clear.
Wow.
Guarantee it. I check it out every time. I swear to God, I'll say, well, okay, they didn't meet your expectation. What, did you give them a due date? Well, no. I have never heard I should never say never, right?
Right.
Yeah. But very rarely does someone say, yes, there was a due date and this was it. And so sometimes that does happen. Sometimes you do have people who let you down.
Yes.
And there's probably a reason, right? So there's just I have studied this. I have done so much reading about accountability. There's books. Crucial Accountability, put out by Vital Smarts, is a good one.
Nice.
And I have taken all those things plus my experience, and I'm making a course for this because I can do like a quick 1-hour training for people.
Sure.
But that doesn't really, it's kind of like, oh, great, did that, put it on the shelf, right?
Right.
We need something a little bit more robust than that because people really need to transform into being an accountability leader, a leader who infuses accountability into their culture. And for that, I think you need something more robust. So I have an 8-week course that I'm putting together for this, and I'm really excited to launch that in January. But it is so important because people who are being held accountable, they want that structure too.
Right.
I want to know what the target is. Tell me what success looks like so that I know exactly what to do. They don't like things being unclear. So it's not just about being unclear. The second thing that people miss the most, besides especially that due date,
yes,
is is getting agreement from the other party. So we think that if I just say, hey, I need that report by Friday.
Right.
Got it? Right? Are they agreeing to that, or are you just throwing that over the wall? Right?
Right. Projecting your own expectations again.
Yeah, because they might be going, yeah, right. That ain't going to happen. I've got 6 other things to do, but I'm not going to bring it up right now because it's uncomfortable. You haven't really made it safe for them to push back. So it has to actually be an agreement. It's not just a directive. And to let people negotiate that, you know, to have that negotiation of maybe instead of saying, I need it, you could say, I really need it by Friday. Tell me what your schedule looks like. What do you think you can do? Let that person have some, let them come up with the solution as well.
Right. To have some ownership in the results. I think it's real. I really like how you matched accountability and expectations, because I think that's a part that we tend to forget about. I've been of the thought process prior to you just mentioning it that way, that a lot of people stray away from accountability, especially in their own businesses, because there's this fear of failure attached to it. Right. So you can have these huge goals with no accountability partner. That way, nobody knows when you failed.
Yeah, true. And, that is the other thing about accountability. It's not a big stick that we're holding over people's heads. Right? It's not, oh, God, you're going to get fired if you don't meet expectations. No, that's not what it is. It's just about having the conversation. So if you didn't meet my expectations, instead of me just shoving that under the rug and ignoring it so that other people get ticked off because you're not holding them, you're not holding their colleague accountable.
Yes.
And that, by the way, that causes a lot of damage. That can be cancerous to an organization. But instead of doing that, accountability just means, hey, I see this. I saw this. This is what you said you were going to do. This is where we are today, and it doesn't match. Let's have a conversation. What happened? Yeah. What's in your way? What are you going to commit to fix this? What are we going to do in the future to make sure it doesn't happen again? How are you going to communicate with me about it?
Right.
That's all we're talking about. That's accountability. It's not, oh my God, you're going to get fired. Now, that may be the case. If you've
right.
Done
that still may
5
happen.
or 6 times. Yeah.
Right.
If you repeat things over and over again and still have the same result, we all know what that is. That means you've got the wrong person in the wrong seat.
Yes.
If that's the case. That's a whole different conversation.
And that actually leads to the next question, because partnered with that is the importance of having difficult conversations, right? And whether that's, with a spouse or with a business partner or even with a client, I think I had a mentor once tell me that whoever has the most difficult conversations wins. And he was saying it not necessarily in a competitive way, but it was a way to help manage those expectations. Can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of difficult conversations and what that looks like?
Oh, yeah. I love that. I'm going to use that. Yeah. The person who has the most difficult conversations wins. That's very powerful. And I think it's very true.
Yep.
If our definition of winning is that you have the best relationships and people love working with you.
Yes.
That's what I would say. Difficult conversations, another fabulous topic that I love. That's another reason that accountability is a problem, is people don't want to have those accountability discussions.
Right.
But I'm a big Vital Smarts fan. So Crucial Conversations is also put out by Vital Smarts, and I call that my communications Bible.
Okay.
And I really use that a lot in my coaching with people to understand how they can approach, again, a difficult conversation doesn't have to be angry. It doesn't be this huge negative conflict. It's all in how you approach it. So I call it, the way I approach those, or suggest people approach those, or I call them the 3 what for questions. What do I want for? So whenever you're approaching, okay, even if it's your wife or your spouse, right?
Yes.
what do I want for that other person in this conversation? What do I want them to walk away with? How do I want them to feel? So that's the first thing you start thinking about.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, what do you want for yourself? What do you want to accomplish? And what do you want to walk away with? And how do you want to feel at the end of that conversation? And then the third one would be, what do you want for the organization or your family, whatever that, the organization is that we're talking about. But what do you want for the organization? What do you want? What role do they play, right, in this relationship and in this conversation? And when you look at those three things, instead of the emotional part that you tend to be stuck in, it kind of pulls you out, right? Pulls you out and lets you look at it from a different perspective. And then it puts you in a different frame of mind to approach. Because most people, I think, would not say that I want to squish the other person like a bug.
Right.
That's not really how they feel. I mean, for a split second they might, but no, if you really say, what do you want for that person? A lot of times it's, I want that person to understand this, or I want them to understand my point of view, or I want them to walk away feeling that they've at least been heard, but that we have solved this problem together.
Yep.
Something like that, right? So it just takes you in that direction. And if you can be that kind of leader, people will love you.
Yes.
Because they know that you're a straight shooter. You're not going to step over things, but you're also going to treat them with respect. That's really all everybody wants.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's the word that was ringing in my head as you were speaking. I was like, it makes people respect where you're coming from. If you can have a civil conversation and it's a difficult conversation, whether it's about expectations or performance, whatever the case is, as long as you're able to communicate that effectively, I think it builds this level of respect, especially within corporate organizations of, okay, that person is tough but fair. That person is somebody that I will, stay a little bit longer for and work a little bit harder for, because I know they have my back as well, because they're going to have that same conversation with, the next employee or the next manager. And we're all going to be on the same page. In fact, what's funny is one of my favorite, in my corporate days, one of my favorite directors that I've ever had literally would call me. And you have those one-on-one sessions, right? Where it's like not really a performance review, not really a check-in. It's just kind of, hey, what's going on?
Sure.
He would always come in and he would say, Chuck, I just want to tell you real quick, I love what you're doing, but you're not doing enough of it. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I can't promote you if you stop at XYZ or if you don't do, these three things. And I think it's, like the course of the conversation so far, he knew how to motivate me. He knew my personality style and he let me work the way that I wanted to work. But he would occasionally do this like fluff, slam thing where he would build me up and then pull the rug from under me with a challenge. And loved it. I loved it so much because it was always a conversation that I walk away with somebody saying, you know what, he gets me. Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that I heard in that example is he was specific, right?
Yes.
He gave you examples. And he also, I'm sure, was very factual. It wasn't just opinions.
Absolutely.
You're a slacker. That's an opinion.
Right.
You missed 3 deadlines last week. That's a fact.
Correct.
Okay, so those kinds of leaders are very good at staying focused on the facts, not the story, I call it. Let the story unfold. You need more information from the person to understand what the story really is. Right. Instead of making one up.
And those are the people that, their employees will follow them, right? So if they leave to another company, if they leave to another company, they go with them, and
they'll work harder, like you said as well. They'll work harder for you. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. When did you learn how to manage? Or when did you become aware of managing your own expectations for your business, for the results, the bottom line, the numbers, the profitability? When did you learn to manage your own expectations around that?
Oh, wow. I had to do that pretty early on. Like when I left my corporate job, I had some savings.
Okay.
And I knew that. So from what I've read, it takes a number of years usually when you launch to replace your salary.
Right.
And I knew that was going to take a lot of hard work. So that's when I was like, okay, I got to have a plan. And that's when, so it was shortly after I left corporate America, I was like, I've got to really get a handle on what my monthly expenses are, what I need to bring in. This was something I wanted to say earlier too, when we were talking about keeping your job for a while before you launch. You don't ever want to be in the position where you're desperate for a client.
Right.
It shows. So you don't want that. You want to be able to say, you know what, that's not a client I want to work with. You know, you don't want to take just anybody.
Right.
People, it took me a while to get my head around that as well. But that was, like I said, that was pretty early on. I started setting goals for myself and learned everything I could about developing relationships because I had never networked in my life. You know, I didn't even know what that was.
Wow. It's funny because, you know, you look at the results of it all these years later, you're, you know, highly sought after business and company to work with for companies. We've been networked together for quite some time now. We always check in and it's like those skills that you learn while you're launching, they never leave and they just seem to kind of multiply effortlessly as you continue to grow your business.
Yes. Yeah, it truly is a natural evolution. At one point, I even felt, I said it this way, I feel like there's a wave, like I love water analogy, you know, so there's this wave that's pushing. It's kind of a gentleness about it. You don't feel like you're being pushed, you know, shoved, but there's this wave behind you that is carrying you instead. And it's just carrying you forward and it's very powerful. And so I kind of have used that as a image of what I see happening. But yeah, you continue, of course, to learn. And I've learned a lot from other coaches, you know, even from colleagues. And I really learned probably the most when I worked with other coaches, when we started to collaborate. Because as that small business owner, everybody's, you know, recreating the wheel for themselves, right? And when you can really share with each other and find the things that you have in common, and then the things that you don't, you can start utilizing those coaches for your clients for things that you just don't really have the expertise in. And so I've been able to do that on numerous occasions too, or even in some cases, I've had a large client where I wasn't enough. I needed more than me. Yeah. You know, I had 13 people to help with strategic planning and individual coaching. And we were doing CVI's, core value index for them too. And it was, wow, I needed some help. So that has really been fabulous as well. I would encourage people to find a way to collaborate with other small businesses that might, you know, that add value to what you already do to your client, for your clientele.
I love it. And that's the key word, is that value add. I think people need to do more of networking on purpose, right? Instead of just doing it for the sake of saying, oh, I was at a networking event, or, well, we're in COVID. So, I was on a networking Zoom. But to do it, you know, with a strategy in mind, and to know that you not only are just not collecting names and what people do, but that you're doing it with value in mind, and saying, oh, okay, even for myself, like if this is a podcast, I network in a certain genre so that I know that if needed, I have guests that can come on like yourself, and they can speak to accountability and managing expectations and core values and things like that, versus just collecting a bunch of names and then not knowing exactly what they're there for.
Yeah, I even tell people you should have goals for your networking event. What do you want to achieve out of it? Why are you going to this networking event? What do you hope to bring away? Even if you just set a goal of, I want to meet two new people, somebody I don't know. That's my goal. That's great. At least have something. Have an idea of what you want to accomplish by being a part of that.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Tell me about the one-page business plan, because that sounds like a unicorn. I've seen it. We've seen it offline. But talk to me a little bit about the one-page business plan, because that is like, where was that, 20 years ago, 10 years ago?
Oh, I know. I wish I would have had it. I know. My God. To me, it's just like it's a gem. So I learned this around the same time that I was involved or exposed to the Core Values Index, actually from the same coach. Okay. So Jane Cresswell, call out to Jane. She is a great resource.
Nice.
So what I found, especially in coaching is, it's not the easiest thing to get started in. You kind of have to start with your clients tend to come from wherever you started. So my clients tended to come from either science-based background or from Dow or, and I kind of grew it from there. And gotcha. So there was a corporate spin to it. And what I found was my business really started to take off when I had tangible things to attach to the coaching. So the Core Values Index was one, and the one-page business plan, because you can coach around those, numerous ways, but yet somebody knows exactly what they're getting. They're getting a business plan on one page after a certain number of hours with you. And that's going to last them a year, and there's going to be a process around that, etc. So whereas most of the time when new coaches start out and people say, what do you do? Well, I'm a coach. Well, what does that mean? Oh, I help you achieve things you wouldn't be able to achieve normally. It's still, it's still ambiguous. It's not concrete enough for people to understand what that means. Right. So if I just said, I specialize in communications and strategic planning and helping executives, communicate those to their teams. Yes. It's a little bit more concrete. Okay, I can visualize that. Right.
You've identified the audience, who the core client is and what you can do to help that core audience.
Yeah. Now I'm not going to do the work.
Right.
But I'm going to give you the tools, and I'm going to help you uncover the best way to do it for your organization, because it's also not a cookie cutter.
Right.
What's best for you. So what I love about the one-page business plan, again, I love simplicity. Simple. Yes. It's 5 questions. And then as a coach, I help you develop, your answers to those questions. But it's your vision, which is what are you building? Mm-hmm. And then it's your mission statement, which is why do you exist? And then it's your goals, your objectives. And, those are, what are our business, what are we going to measure? What are our business objectives that we're going to measure?
Nice.
And then the 4th one is your strategies. How are you going to get there? What tools are you going to use to get there? So there's lots of conversation around strategies, because I guarantee you, if I ask 12 people what strategy means, I get 12 different answers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the buzzword right now is around those SMART goals, right? Where
exactly.
So you already know the buzzword is around those SMART goals, where people will, they ask, are they, attainable, and are they measurable, all those things. And it's funny to me that everyone's definition is a little bit different, and we get so caught up in the definition that we forget that they have to be actionable. They have to be things that we can actually do and touch. Right, on a day-to-day basis, because you can have this great, well-written goal all day long, but if it doesn't have steps that you can implement, right, things that you do on day 1, things that you do on day 2, I think that's where we go wrong. And even if you look at, examples like these, lately I've been working on this app on my phone that, reminds me to do a couple sit-ups every day, right? And
Yeah.
the joy of this app is not the sit-ups or the results. It's the reminder of exactly which 5 exercises I have to do, and that it's only going to take me 7 minutes to do them. Right. And so
Exactly.
I think that there's something to be learned from those actionable steps that we can take,
Yeah.
towards our business. And if it's, I'm a fan of the 1 minute, the 1-page business plan. I think I want everything fast.
Exactly. Simple and fast.
Simple and
which is the
fast.
lead in, right? The action plan is the last element. And the reason that it's 1 page also is because it's a discipline in being concise in how you are documenting it. You don't write a paragraph, right? You're very concise.
Love it.
Use fewer words, and you're only allowed to have 9 goals, 9 strategies, and 9 action plans. Because if you have more than that, you're too dilute. You got way too much going on if you have more than that for your organization. Now you might, like you said, you might have milestones, right, underneath those. But it's funny, as you were talking about goals that need to be actionable, what came up for me was, a goal like, I want to be the best coach in Indiana. Right? Is that a goal? No.
It's a wish. It's a want.
If you don't at least have a date in there, it's a wish. And how are you going to measure that?
Right.
So smart. That is very key. They need to be smart. Otherwise, you will never know if you get there.
Yeah.
So I love that tool because it pulls all those things into this one thing. And typically when I work with someone, if I'm working with an individual, you really need about 8 hours, not at one time, obviously, but you need some time because there's a lot. This is, it's a brain exercise. People get really, they're tired after they're doing this. And I've done it with teams too, where I'll pull the team together.
Okay.
And we will set the goals for the organization as a team. And boy, usually I try to get those in 4 hours if the vision and mission's already done, and then we can go straight to the goals. And I ask them to send me some goals ahead of time so we can kind of vote and get settled on them to save some time.
Yes.
But they're exhausted at the end of that. It is a lot of brain work, but you only have to do it once a year. And then now the secret again is not to set it on the shelf, right?
Right.
The secret then is you revisit it at least monthly with your team to say, where are we? And are we changing anything? And has anything in the market changed that means we need to change something?
Right.
But it's a great way. It's a great tool to use also in decision making. New opportunity pops up and it's this bright, shiny object. Great. It looks fabulous. Does it align to our mission statement and our vision statement? Because if it doesn't, well, then we either need to change the vision statement, right?
Yes.
Which is fine. We can make that call, or it's a distraction. Let's make the call. Which one is it? Is it a distraction, or are we changing our mission statement? Because there's especially with small business owners, it's like, oh, there's this great opportunity here. There's this one here. Well, where do you want to spend your energy?
Right. Right.
You kind of have to have that ability to figure out how are you going to figure that out of where you're going to put your energy. Yeah, there might be a quick win over here, but it's going to take you so many more hours than the one over here that aligns with your strategy and has more of a long-term payoff.
Yeah, I think there's a lack of congruency. You and I were talking about Instagram a while back in terms of how it's a great tool to leverage, but I think because social media has gotten so fast, so big, I think there's a lack of congruency around a lot of entrepreneurs pivoting from one opportunity to another just because that's the bright, shiny object. That's where the market may be going. But if you want to be known as an expert in XYZ field, you have to stay in XYZ territory, right? Instead of switching over to, you may have been a great CPA. And now, of course, we know everybody needed face masks. So now you are a distribution expert for face masks. It's like, come on, I need you to stay in the lane we know you for. That congruency is so important
Scope
in your
creep
offerings. Exactly.
Being very focused, I think, is very key to success. You have to be focused, and you need to be able to say no to things. And I'll give you another one. You need to be able to fire clients.
Yes, I love
there are
that.
some clients that just know, they're not worth. If they are draining you, I don't think you're helping anybody.
Right.
You're really not helping them. You're definitely not helping yourself. And if anything, you might be robbing them of the opportunity to find what they really need.
Yeah. It's funny because I think a lot of coaches, especially when they start out, like you said earlier, they want to help everyone, so everyone is their client. And I think that there's two identifiers. One is when you realize that you feel like you're working harder than the client is. And then two, when you keep running into the same pitfall. And that's why I think it's good to have a network or a community of coaches, because what you may be good at may not be what that client needs. And then you can pivot and say, you know what, we've run into this about 3 times. I'm going to put a word in with Lynn Zettler. I think that's the person you should be working with, because she's great at getting over this hurdle that we can't seem to, get past myself. And then having that difficult conversation, right, to tie it all in and saying, I appreciate working with you, the opportunity, but I want the best for you. And the best for you right now, I feel, is going to be with someone else.
Exactly. Yeah. If you really care about your clients, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely, you need to give them what's best for them. And sometimes it's not you, and that's okay.
That is okay. Getting close to wrapping up, I wanted to ask you if you subscribe to or believe in this statement. In this arena, right, the personal growth stage and the coaching, we've all heard the statement, your income will never outgrow your level of personal growth. What do you think about that statement?
Your income will never outgrow your personal growth. Wow. I had not heard that one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I have not heard that one.
I think that's for my
like
network marketing background, right? Is we've all
you're
heard
giving
it.
me a lot. You're giving me a lot of new things here. Oh, that is without a doubt 1,000% true. Because especially as a coach, you grow so much by just working with your clients and watching them and learning from them and seeing them succeed. And oh gosh, I've got some my favorite clients, they coach themselves kind of, during the conversation. I barely have to ask a question. They're just naturally walking their way through it.
Yes.
And then they naturally get, I think I'm going to do this. Yeah, I think that's the right, and you haven't even said anything. I love those clients. All I'm doing is creating that space for them to just naturally feel safe and explore and be open, right, to what they already know.
Yeah.
So, definitely. I think that is a huge, that's a huge awareness.
Absolutely agree. What does the word vision mean for Lynn Zettler?
What is okay, are you asking me what my vision is, or are you asking me what does that mean?
We can do both, but let's start with what does it mean? Yeah, what does the word mean for you?
What does the word mean? What the word means for me, vision means, I tend to be, right, I'm aligned with that one-page business plan. What do you want to build? What do you want the world? Build, are you building a company, or you could even apply that to your life?
Right.
What do you want your life to look like 5 years from now? That's your vision.
Nice.
There's lots of elements to it. You can break it down into as many as you want, but paint that picture. What do you want your life to look like? I can remember thinking that when I was in corporate and going, what would my day look like if I'm working for myself, right? And just envisioning what that meant, the freedom of that, and where are you and what are you doing and that kind of thing.
Yes.
That's all part of that vision. It's kind of it's a fun part, because it's the kind of the dreaming part, right? You can say whatever you want, as long as it's well, I suppose there's a lot of things that are still possible, but it's not too blue sky.
Yeah.
As long as you believe you can attain it somehow.
I love it. And then what about for yourself? Where do you think Core Impact is going to be in the next, few years, coming out of obviously this strange time where we're not able to have, packed out meeting rooms and conferences and things like that? How are you able to, or what are you looking at in terms of next steps or the vision for CVI?
Yeah, I think that this whole COVID thing has taught us so much. And what I'm hearing from my clients, and I'm seeing in the news too, is that people didn't realize how successful they could be working remotely. That they didn't realize how productive. And I, by the way, started working remotely over 20 years ago, because even when I worked for Dow, we moved from the corporate headquarters to another location, and I had a home office. I was one of the first people who did that.
Nice.
So I knew right away I was much more productive because I had no interruptions. I could get so much done.
Yes.
And I think that people since they've been forced to do it this way, corporations, companies are all realizing, wow, look at this. We saved money by not having this, and we still had this productivity. I think that's going to carry on even when COVID goes away. Yeah. I think that remote work is still going to be very solid. So now, I've always coached, never in person. Very rarely do I coach people in person. I've usually done it by phone or by Zoom anyways. So that won't change. But the other change that I'm seeing online now is a lot of coursework, a lot of sign up for this course. Here's, number of modules that are going to teach you how to do this. And here's what you're going to have at the end of it. And very well done, robust courses. And so I really think that's another wave of the future. Okay. So I'm jumping on that bandwagon. As I said before, accountability is my first one that I'm working on. And then I've got a list of other courses that I want to put together. But I want to marry the coaching with the course. So it would be some recording and some live, a mixture of both.
Okay.
I definitely think that is a way forward, that the future is really going to incorporate that more and more.
I love it. In terms of execution, if you could give us a couple of bullet points on what it takes to execute at a high level. I think that the listeners, we've been lucky enough to grow this thing. I always speak this part because I want it to keep growing. We got 30 states and 18 countries. If you could talk about execution, what would that look like for you?
Execution, to me, is almost equated with focus. Almost equated with focus. Execution, you have to be crystal clear about what you want, and then put those dates in there. You have to put those milestones in place and stay focused on the milestones. And there are days where, again, those bright, shiny objects come in. You have to be able to say, no, it is not time for that.
Yes.
It's time to stay focused on this milestone. Once I get that milestone done, now, if I did my thing for the day, have some fun and do something that seems fun to you. But you have to, like you said too, I loved what you said about the daily app, do this 7 minutes of, you have to lay those things out for yourself. And that's why the one-page business plan is part of that as well. What are those action steps, those success steps that are so critical that you have to do every day or, this week to get towards that? And that's where the discipline and the focus has to stay there. You can still be a very creative person, but you need to find a way, whether that's a partner that keeps you accountable, or maybe you have someone in your organization that's better at it, but somehow you need that discipline and that focus, and that's going to give you the execution.
Absolutely agree. It's fun. Every time we talk, I have so many revelations. That's why it's a joy to have you on the show, because
it's such a pleasure to talk to you.
It's funny. We talk about the doing the daily steps, and everyone always gets captivated by this perception of overnight success, and it's maddening to me, right? Because even if you look at like the best illustration of there's no such thing as an overnight success is like that Malcolm Gladwell book, The 10,000 Hour Rule. And it's like you have to do, back to the little sit up app, you have to do something a little bit every day, and that combination of those small actions tend to snowball. And that's the execution part for me. Yeah, it builds.
Yeah, they build on each other, and that's why you just have to keep doing it. You have to trust that it does happen. It's like that wave I said, right?
Yep, absolutely.
You have to trust that it's carrying you. It's carrying you. The first marketing person that I used also used a different analogy. She called it blowing up a balloon. So everything that you do to market yourself, right? You're inflating this balloon that people can see.
Yes.
Right. And so you have to do it on a daily basis and fill it with air. If you stop, it's going to lose air and it's going to go down. People aren't going to see you anymore.
Wow.
So it's that consistency of putting air in your balloon. That's what you need to do. And you can't let up on it. That at least make it, put it. You can get a running start. I worked really hard the first 2 years of my business to recoup that income that I had left. I haven't had to work as hard as those first 2 years, but those first 2 years were blowing up that balloon.
Yep. And you can tell that it worked, because I mean, anybody that knows you knows that success is something that chases you around relentlessly, right? It's like you're a magnet for it. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to the Hawk Vision podcast. We're so happy that you were able to spend some time with us. Lynn, let everybody know where they can find you online.
Oh, yeah, perfect. I am at coreimpactcoaching.com. And I put out a monthly leadership newsletter too. Would love for you to sign up for that. It is full of tips and articles that I typically write myself. And I'll definitely be giving people a inside look there for the accountability class course that I'm going to have in January as well. So coreimpactcoaching.com.
Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe across your social media platforms. You can always find us, if you stumbled across us today, you can always find us at the Hawk Vision podcast across all social media platforms. This is, where work ethic, belief, and vision all come together, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will talk.
Representing East Oakland, man.